Everybody, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I am delighted to be talking with the creator of a robot, I believe, a comics robot, and that is N.A.R.L.I. The person I'm talking with is Kevin Michael Rowe. May I call you Kevin, or is it Michael?
Yes, please. Yo, Kevin, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. Well, Kevin, thank you for jumping in and taking a few minutes out of your time, and thank you for bringing what looks like Jay and Silent Bob back there, maybe,
Where,
and
oh, yeah, yeah. Kevin
yeah,
Smith,
and
a long time ago, he came to town and I got
oh,
like an
nice.
autograph and stuff. Yeah. This is just
Cool.
my room where my wife makes me keep all my stuff. So, yeah.
We all need one of those,
Yes, we
absolutely.
do. Yeah.
And I think is that Sting up there, but not like the original Sting. That's like
Oh, the little stencil. No, it's a stencil I made of Mr. Sinister for a buddy of mine.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say
yeah.
it's either Sting or Mr. Sinister. So
Yeah. Are you talking about the
definitely,
professional wrestler Sting?
that's right. That's right. There
Yeah.
was a time where he kind of did some Crow inspiration and looked
Oh,
a
yeah,
little bit
yeah,
like
yeah.
the Mr. Sinister type. But yeah,
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
now I feel like I have to make a Mr. Sinister Sting stencil or a
I
Sting
mean,
stencil. Yeah.
well, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I always like to kind of see the creative
Of
space that
course.
people are
Yeah.
in. So thanks for letting me explore the space a little bit. But I know that we're here to talk about Gnarly, and I've done a
Yeah.
little bit of homework, just a tad.
Mhm.
It looks like Gnarly's been around for a little bit. It looks like Gnarly has been out in the world of creating. So I'm curious about how this world came to be for you.
Yeah, honestly, like most great ideas in the world, it came to me when I was supposed to be working. I was
Uh-huh,
at my
uh-huh.
job and I was just like daydreaming one day, like I've always considered myself like a writer or like a creator of some types. I didn't really have like a lot to show for it. But then like I started thinking like, oh, like robots are cool. Like so I came up with an acronym Gnarly, and I'm like,
Hmm,
okay,
hmm.
so this is just like pretty fun, and I was just like playing around with that, and then I'm like, okay, so let me write some stuff down, and I started jotting notes, and then 5 years later, the comic came out. So yeah,
Nice, nice.
yeah.
And I know that there are some glimpses online. There are
Mhm.
digital glimpses out there, but there's
Yeah.
also a book on the way as well.
Yes, yeah. So I did do a very small print run and like a first edition of it about 2 years ago, a year ago, which was Gnarly's Tubular Tales.
Hmm, hmm.
And then I after that came out, it like was successful in the sense that no one told me they hated it. And
That's
people seem
always
to
a good
enjoy it.
success. Yeah.
Yes, it is. That's when last year I started working on the sequel, which is the Ineffable Gnarly, which is coming out. And I figured, like, with the launch of this one, which I'm doing a little bit bigger, I might as well do a reprint of the first one, and then
Hmm,
just
hmm.
like launch them both at the same time. So
Yes, smart creating, very smart
yeah.
creating. Yeah. Well, curious about some of the sort of ingredients that are baked in. This is a little bit of a sub question out of one, but
Yeah,
sort of maybe some of the inspirations that led to the character in the story.
of course. I always joke that it's like, Bill and Ted programmed C-3PO from Star
Nice.
Wars.
Uh-huh.
Growing up, like my family, we always like watched movies and stuff. I was born. Everyone considers like the era they grew up in, like the golden era when the cool stuff happened. But I was, born in
Hmm.
'84, so like saw Ninja Turtles, I saw Bill and Ted, I saw like the Star Wars movies being re-released and everything. So, and Bill and Ted is still. I love Back to the Future. I consider Bill and Ted the best time travel movie of all time, just
Oh
because.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean George Carlin's fantastic. Keanu Reeves. Oh God, I forgot Bill's name. He's gonna watch this and hate me. But Bill, but like it's just something that like always gravitate towards me, along with like that kind of like cultural at the time, like skateboarding and like like '80s bad boys like Christian Slater and Gleaming the
Oh
Cube
yes.
and stuff like. And then I've got glasses and I grew up a fat kid, so I've loved Star Wars from the moment I discovered it. So like I'm like, okay, how can I combine all these things I love into like one thing? And like, and I figured like when I first came up with the idea and like writing, like, okay, if I'm gonna make this comic, this might be my only chance at it. So I'm gonna
Hmm.
throw everything I love into one thing. And then Gnarly was born. So
Love it, love it. Was that Bill Winters? Is that right?
something Winters. Oh God, it's gonna
Yes.
bother me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll
But
we'll we'll look it up and we'll kind of
good.
we'll insert that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, in terms of deciding to tell the story in comics, curious about how that decision came about.
I have always loved comics. I
Mm-hmm.
honestly don't remember a time in my life when I wasn't exposed to comic books in some shape or form, whether it's like, old reruns of like the 60s Batman on our local station because we didn't have cable, or, seeing like the early comic book movies or like Superman or something. And then just like reading the books, like getting passed down from like cousins or anything else. Like I just always remember loving them. And when I was younger, like I'm not much of an artist. And by much, I mean, I'm not very good at drawing at all, but I still dabble a little bit. But like, when I was a kid, like I would write my own like official uh handbook of the Marvel Universe entries for like my own characters and stuff. So it's like it's always something I was
Nice.
very passionate about and something I loved and something like, like I've always like had like a toe in.
Uh-huh.
And then, like the pandemic hit, like the world was shutting down and like I just got more and more into the comics. I was reading like my old collection. I saw some videos on YouTube of like people like making comics, and I'm like, yeah, I can do this. So I'm gonna try. Like
Yeah.
even when I first came up with art, there's always like a pipe dream, like, oh, maybe one of these days I'll write something about it. But
Mm-hmm.
and then I did, and it was awesome. So I enrolled in a class at a comics experience. The website's run by Andy Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
took a little like it was writing a 5-page story, and that was the first Gnarly story. And
Nice.
yeah, and since then it's like as soon as I wrote the first couple words, I'm like, all right, yeah, like this is everything finally clicked. I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So that's what I'm gonna do.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you mentioned Star Wars there, and by the way, nice modesty there with your art.
Thank
Appreciating
you.
that. I think everybody
Yeah.
sort of apologizes for their art, but really enjoy the style that you bring.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, William luckily is the person who did all the artwork and everything in the book. It was William Montalvo. I
Yeah.
just did the
Yeah.
lettering, which was a pain in the butt. And I wrote the story. But thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so one of the things that I was going to mention there is you've got Star Wars, but
Mhm.
any particular kinds of comics or comic stories that kind of connected you to begin with, and then we'll circle back and talk about
Yeah.
that creative team a
Oh,
little
of
more.
course. Yeah. I mean, like growing up, like I was a diehard like Marvel and X-Men fan.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
like I read those religiously and I watched the cartoons religiously. Batman was also like really big. And even like a lot of times there was also a lot of adaptations from like old cartoon shows, like Thundercats comics
Oh
or
yeah. Hmm.
Masters of
Hmm.
the Universe, or even like the G.I. Joe stuff by like Larry Hama and everything, like for Marvel. Transformers was always really big. So all that stuff like just played into it. And then like, actually growing up again, like in the late 80s when, cartoon shows didn't have to be educational at all, and seeing all the
Right.
product placement stuff like that all like really inspired at me as well. So like all that stuff, instead of like learning things in school, I just memorized facts about GI Joe and stuff. So
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's a great way to learn. Great way to
Oh
learn.
yeah.
Great vocabulary there as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the creative team on the book and
Yeah.
the collaboration. So I'm curious
Mhm.
about what that's been like, the process, and anything that you want to say. Would
Yeah.
you like to introduce the band for us? I guess is
Oh,
the
of course. So
question.
the main artist and the cover artist for the first issue of Gnarly, William Montalvo, who I met in that aforementioned comics experience class. He was doing his own like writing thing, and he just had time in his schedule to bust out the first like 5-page story, and I loved it. And so he was able to work on the other stories I had like going on the back burner and stuff. And working with him has been phenomenal. He's a very skilled artist, and his style like just matched what I was thinking like perfectly. And he's quick too. He did all the layouts, the pencils, the inking, the coloring, like all that stuff. So I mean, I think we got like the first like 5 pages done in like 2 weeks, if that, if memory
Yeah.
serves correct. So he's always been like super quick with it, which is phenomenal. I wish I could write as fast as he could draw. And he's just been really great. And he just put out his own self-published book too, called Night of the Spider Queen. That's really, really rad, really like high
Nice.
fantasy, like manga influenced.
Uh-huh.
So that's pretty cool. And then the cover artist for the second book, The Ineffable Gnarly, is a guy I know named Scott Lamine, who I call the greatest comics artist who is not currently making comics. Everything that I have seen him doodle or draw, like, has just been like it's there's so much energy and there's so much like life coming off the page. Like it's just like slaps you across the face and stands out. And like, and I met him like we like a couple different comic book groups and stuff online, and then one day out of the blue I get tagged in an Instagram post and he did the first official Gnarly fan art. And like, oh, that's awesome. And then I'm just super lucky that he was able to and was willing to do a cover for me. It's just been phenomenal. And one of these days I'll get him to do some interiors too when his schedule slows down some at work. But yeah,
Yeah.
like so, and working with everyone has just been great. Like this is the best collaboration I've ever been in. And like everyone's just been super nice and responsive to emails, and no one's been a jerk, which is what we all hope for.
Right, right. This is
Yeah,
this is a good life. It's a good life.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, very cool, and glad to hear that the book has been
yeah.
a positive process coming together. Glad to hear that it's out there,
Mhm.
coming out into the world. Before we talk about where it is, where people can find it, and all of that sort of thing, any sort of elevator pitch, if I'm a reader out there and I'm like, I like comics, I want to get into
Yeah,
this, anything
yeah.
like that that you'd like to mention for folks that are curious.
Of course. I usually say Gnarly, the Radical Robot. It's an all ages stories that resonates with kids from ages 8 to 80. And it takes like the glory days of like Saturday morning cartoons with like some adventure, some fun, and some forced moral message in it at the same time.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
The Full House
Excuse me.
moment.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. If you like TGIF, you'll love Gnarly. So
We love some TGIF, step by step,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, by means of that final official question, and then we can hit anything that we might have missed. What currently has your attention? What currently has the creative focus? And then
Yeah.
sort of dreams of what's next,
Yeah.
as well as spaces where people can connect.
Gotcha. So I'm doing a lot right now. I'm actually the busiest I've ever been, which is good and bad. Like creatively, like we are throwing a very small independent comic book show in the town I live in, Kingston, New York. It's the Kingston Independent Comics Expo. And that's coming up very, very soon. And that's been great with working with the collaborators, Chris Levecki, one of the owners of World's End Comics, and Joe Gonzalez, who organizes an event called Art Walk Kingston out here,
Mhm.
just trying to make something out of nothing, and like working on like the branding of that, the message, like hanging up flyers, getting artists in on it and stuff. Like I spent like 2 hours going around town like hanging up flyers today. And then more on like the more creative aspect, I am revising a 3 issue like little mini series that I wrote a couple years ago, that I like to describe as like Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight meets Get in the Van, the book by Henry Rollins about touring with Black
Mhm.
Flag back in the 80s.
Mhm.
And that's it's been really fun going back and revisiting that because I haven't really like touched on it for a while because I've been like so like gnarly focused. So that's pretty cool. I'm hoping to get like some artwork started on that. We'll find a collaborator to work with by the end of the year to get started and get some of that stuff out. And then one of my really old high school friends, Joel, and I, he's had this pitch. He's out in LA doing real creative stuff. But he's had this idea for a zombie horror comedy for a long time, and he's like, "Oh, do you want to make it a comic?" I'm like, "Absolutely, I do." So we've been working closely together on that. It's like zombie Amish people, which I think will be a lot of fun.
Nice,
So
nice.
yeah, we're kind of hoping to get some more pages on that, like when both of our schedules allow. And then I'm always like just like doodling or making like little zines and stuff like that as well.
Cool, cool. Awesome
Yeah.
things. And then any web spaces, any particular places like that that people can
Yeah,
go
of
and
course.
check
Yeah.
out?
You can check out most of my creative stuff is over at hopefulromantics.com. It's
Mhm, mhm.
ROWEMANTICS. Or you can go to gnarlytheradicalrobot.com. That's like the web store. So you can pre-order the issues of Gnarly. There's some buttons and some stickers, some other stuff on there. And then you can find me on like Instagram and Blue Sky and Twitter. It's like at Kevin Michael Rowe, my full name.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you for the time. Thank you for the
Oh,
work.
oh,
Uh,
please.
I'm an English teacher, so I just want to say something like it's been gnarly meeting you, or it's
Oh,
been
that's
a
great.
gnarly episode, or something like that.
Yeah.
But great to talk with you, and glad to have you back anytime.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.